All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS Office Hours. It is Friday, August 20th of 2021. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the stream. Whether you are watching me live here or watching this back as a recording or listening on the commute home, I know there's plenty of users here that are now enjoying this show on the commute home from work. So welcome everybody that is tuning in. Guys, I am really excited to be here today. We had an awesome stream yesterday with Andy showing off our new redesigned beta. We had probably some of our highest viewership we've ever had on a live show. A lot of excitement about that right now. So I'm really excited about that today. If you missed it, that video is posted up on our YouTube channel. It's about 40 minutes long. We walked through all of the new visual features, the new functional features that are in the redesign. Just walked through kind of an overview of some of the highlights there. So really excited about that. Check that video out if you haven't already. That redesign or that beta is now open to all SaberSim users. So if you already have a SaberSim account, you are welcome to join the beta. We would love if you tried it out and gave us some of your feedback and helped us out chasing out some of the final fixes that we need to make. So if you'd like to join, you can first of all, just access it, beta.sabersim.com, log in with your existing SaberSim account and try it out. But what we are asking for you guys is to please DM me in Slack, ask to be added to the private beta channel in Slack. And we're keeping all of our conversation about bug fixes, questions, feedback, everything like that in that beta channel. So I see a couple users here. Don already reached out in the Office Hours channel in Slack to get added to that channel. Don, I'll get you as soon as I am off the stream here today. But please, we are asking everybody that uses SaberSim regularly to help us out to get this thing ready to go and live for everybody before football. So check out the video. It's up on YouTube. And please join the beta. Please test it out. Please DM me in Slack and ask to be added to the channel and start providing some of your feedback. But a lot of excitement about it yesterday. Dark mode, resetting all team totals, uploading custom min and max exposures, custom tables on the team projections and the exposures page, uploading custom projections and applying them to all slates, better iconography for the teams so you can quickly see what teams you're looking at in the stacking tool in your lineups. I could go on and on. There are a lot of new features in this thing. We're just super excited about it here. So really glad that we were able to put that out to everybody. Anyway, I'll go ahead and just get into things here. We've got a couple questions. I think as we move forward here, and now that we're in a kind of a public beta with the redesign, I'm still going to be hosting these office hours using the existing app for now. But as we get a little bit closer and as we start to obviously put that new redesign live, we'll shift over there. I think for now on these office hours, I am happy to answer any questions anybody has of how to do a certain thing on the beta or if something has moved. But obviously just keeping in mind that things still are in beta. If you're running into a particular issue, it may actually just be a bug that we need to get worked out. So, but happy to talk a little bit about the beta here on show. Obviously, we've still got plenty of questions here that are related to the current app. So we'll talk about that. Always some DFS strategy stuff, some broader strategy things too. So we'll go ahead and hit all those questions. But guys, I guess as always, I do the show live for a reason, right? I want follow-up questions from you guys. I want engagement from you. If I'm sitting here talking about something and I'm not totally answering the question in the way that makes sense or really answers the question you were trying to ask, or if you've just got your 2 cents that you want to throw in when somebody asks a certain question or we're on a certain topic, please do so. You can do so in the YouTube channel, in the YouTube chat and in the Office Hours channel in Slack. I am monitoring both of those chats pretty much the entire show here. We will keep an eye on everything. But we've got a couple questions here today, variety of different topics, I guess. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to start with a few questions that came in from Chase here in our support channel yesterday, actually, while we were on talking about the redesign. And it's similar concepts, similar topics to a lot of what we've been talking about recently about, variance and win expectations. And these questions in particular, well, I guess I'll just go ahead and read them, but there's really 2 here. And they're pretty similar questions. So let me go ahead and get these into the chat so you guys can see these up on screen. But two questions back to back. And again, I think if you were watching me last week, you'll probably remember similar questions coming in. But the questions are, when I look at my build from previous night, I assume, and look at the actual score, why is it always that the majority of the time the highest actual score lineup is never in the first 20 lineups? Follow that up with, why is a lot of nights the best lineup in my build has a Saber score of around 70 to 80? Yeah, and we got this question last week, very similar one. And I'm going to answer this in a similar way to how I answered that question. And the fact is that Saber Score is really going to be, it's a calculation we make to determine what we think is going to be the best overall lineup based on the sliders you've chosen, how well correlated that lineup is, how well leveraged it is against the field, and what kind of upside potential it has, right? And that Saber Score is in effect to quantify it. It is our goal that the best lineups overall in your pool are going to be floated to the top via Saber Score. But in reality, any given night, right, we're only going to play this slate out one time. There's a lot of natural variance that could come into play here. It's very likely that on the average night, your highest score may not be your highest Saber scoring lineup, right? If it were, that would be a beautiful thing. But the reality is that just with the natural variance of the night, that may not always be the case. There's a few different examples of that. If it's a night where a team that if there isn't a team that has a single ceiling outcome and a lot of the teams kind of score similar run totals, your highest scoring lineup might actually be one that was a little less correlated, had a little bit smaller stacks, and had therefore a little bit of a lower Saber score. If the chalk has a really good night, it may end up being that one of your lineups that had a little bit total higher ownership also ended up being your highest actual scoring lineup, even if its Saber score wasn't as high because it was highly owned, right? So those are just like a couple examples. Does that mean that we want to intentionally lower our stacking? No. Does that mean we want to play chalkier lineups? No. But that's just kind of an example. I mean, even beyond that, there can just be a lineup that maybe wasn't in your top 20 that was your highest scoring lineup, right? This kind of thing can happen. So from a practical standpoint, what are some things that we can do about this, right? Because I know that at least explains why this might be happening, but maybe that's not the most comforting answer. I think the single biggest thing you can do if you're finding that lineups that are just outside of the pool of lineups you actually requested, or even just are in your pool, and not in your top 20 are ended up being your highest scoring lineups, is play more lineups, right? That's part of why our messaging about contest selection is to play as many lineups as you can at the lowest dollar amounts possible before going up in stakes. If you're playing the four-seamer on DraftKings and you're playing $24 lineups every single night, we recommend dropping down in stakes, playing dime times, quarter jukeboxes, single entries below $3. Get as many lineups as you can with that $80 you're investing in your 20, because what that's going to allow you to do is get a greater spread of lineups that are in your pool into contests, right? When that lineup is your 100th lineup and your best actual scoring lineup overall is your 100th lineup, if you're playing 100 lineups, you have an opportunity to put that into a contest and return that expected value, I guess, right? The other big point here is I think it should be a testament to your overall process that your process is working in general if you are landing high upside lineups, high scoring lineups in your broader pool at all, right? On a given contest, a night like this, even a 14-game slate, there are hundreds of thousands of lineups that you can play that even within a reasonable range of salary limits and projected points, removing lineups with guys that aren't playing at all and things like that. Just looking at the total number of viable lineups you could be playing that night, 500 is a tiny, tiny minority of those contests. So if you are building in your pool, of your pool of 500 lineups, you're building lineups that would be finishing in the top 1%, the top 0.1%, even the top 2 or 3%, right? You're probably doing something right. You're probably taking a good overall approach. So from that point on, I think the goal would be to play as many lineups as you can to give yourself an opportunity to realize the upside of some of those lineups. That's not to say with just playing 20, eventually the variance is going to swing in your favor. You're going to land a lineup. Your best scoring lineup is going to be in that 20, and you're going to take something down, right? There's a lot of kind of natural variance that comes into play between a lineup showing up in your broad pool of 500 and getting into that pool of 20. And eventually that variance is going to swing in your favor. But again, I know this is a little bit frustrating. One thing I would recommend being very careful about and probably avoiding is and this is similar to another question we had last week, is I wouldn't overly study one particular slate and figure out exactly what you had to do with either projections or exposures or build settings to get the highest scoring lineup possible in your top 20 or 10 or 1. What you end up doing, I think, is you end up basically just kind of rigging the machine that is the builder up to have been optimized for the actual scoring results on that one single slate that I don't think is actually going to be effective in making you a better DFS player long term. So I would instead review your results over a longer period of time. You can review your top 1% equity lineups. We've talked a lot about that recently by seeing how many lineups in your total pool of 500 would have made it in the top 1% of contests. And if that's greater than 1% of 500, you were outpacing your potential, right? Studying that kind of thing over a longer period of time, I think is a little bit of a more feasible and kind of sustainable way of tracking your progress. So again, kind of coming full circle here. One, I know that's a little frustrating, right? Especially if that lineup was 21, 22, 23, and you played 20 and you just missed it, can be a little frustrating. The two things I would say here is, one, take it as a testament to your process that you are building those lineups, period. You're going in with projections, whether they are the default SaberSim projections or ones you've edited, and build settings, whether they are custom build settings or the default SaberSim sliders and things like that, that are landing you and building you high upside lineups. And that variance will swing in your favor sooner or later. But two, take a look at your contest selection strategy and make sure that you are playing as many lineups as possible at the lowest dollar amounts first to get to the amount of bankroll you want invested to smooth out some of that variance and lessen some of those blows. So really good questions, Chase. Don't know if you're able to catch this live or watching along with me here, but I will get you a link to this recording and timestamp that for you. And if you have any follow-up on that or anything like that, feel free to reach out, because I am always happy to talk about this kind of stuff and answer any more questions. So let's see here. All right. So another question, good question came in from B Crimson here. And guys, this is actually, I think, the last question that I have in my queue at the moment. So feel free to pop some additional questions into the YouTube chat now, into the Office Hours channel and Slack, and we will get to them as soon as I'm done with this one. Actually, no, I see, Kenneth, you've got a question in the queue already. So I'm going to hit this one from B Crimson. This one came in before the show started, and then we'll jump over to yours. So this said, question about the sports betting feature. Looking into getting into prop betting, specifically on prize picks. Would the sports betting add-on be good for this? Yeah. So let's do a little quick demo of this prop betting feature. It changed spots in the redesign, so I was a little confused there. But yeah, the prop betting feature is pretty slick, and there's a lot of edge on these markets for prop bets. The reason being, at least partially, is first of all, a lot of these bets have pretty low limits. So there isn't a ton of really sharp money or really big money coming in on these prop bets for typical regular season baseball. Something like the Super Bowl might be a little bit different. But for regular season baseball and that kind of thing, regular season sports, there's not a lot of money coming in on one side or the other. So the lines a lot of times are pretty soft. They are pretty beatable lines. There's also a ton of these prop bets available. The books really can't keep up with having the sharpest lines possible on every single prop they have out there. So there's a lot of value that you can get in these things. But the way this works is you'll basically pick your player. So we could pick someone like, I thought Wheeler was on the slate tonight. Is it Chris Sale's on the slate? Chris Sale's on the slate. We can go ahead, and I like to look at strikeouts. That's one of the props I look at for pitchers a lot. And you can enter in exactly what the prop you're looking at. So maybe, I don't know what his line is, but maybe it's -7.5, even money, and then click analyze. And it's going to tell you if we think it's a good bet. So maybe this is a little bit of a soft line. This one, this maybe is a line you can get out there. I don't know. I didn't look at this before I started, but say you found somewhere that had Chris Sale at more than 7.5 strikeouts for basically just under even money. We would say that this has a 32.7% ROI with a suggested bet of 3.5 units, right? So really kind of cool little tool. The way this works is it's using our game simulations to actually determine how many simulations out of our entire pool of game sims that this event is reached, right? And there's a lot of value here compared to just looking at player projections or something like that. or even traditional projections that you might see on another site that has a Chris Sale strikeout number. Maybe they have his projection at 8.2 strikeouts or something like that. And you can tell that there's probably some edge in taking this bet, but we can actually leverage our game simulations and tell you exactly how much of an edge you have and exactly what a suggested unit bet would be. So pretty cool. I know, B Crimson, you mentioned Prize Picks here. I'm not super familiar with Prize Picks. I haven't used it too much myself. I know one thing that they do is the double and like triple, basically kind of like parlay picks. And I think that starts to get a little tricky there because you're going to be parlaying 2 or 3 different bets together, and then they're going to give you some kind of combined odds. I would say in general, you could probably still use this, but it would probably take a little bit of breaking down their, it would probably take a little bit of combining the actual win. So what I would recommend doing is if you were going to combine these, so for example, you wanted to take Chris Sale, more than 7.5 strikeouts, and then maybe also, I don't know, maybe you were like combining that with a Yelich more than, I don't even know, maybe like more than half of a run. And then what I would do is I would multiply the 2 win percentages together to get a combined win percentage, and then use something that like an online odds calculator. This would be a couple extra steps, but you can combine your odds. You can, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. You can convert an implied probability into like American odds using a variety of different odds calculators out there and see if that's still a profitable bet. So I think like one extra step to be thinking about some of those kind of more parlay type picks that you make on Prize Picks and things like that, but it should still work really well. You're still taking advantage of our game simulations to do this. So these can be really soft markets. I highly recommend people checking it out. It's a best place to start if you're interested in getting into sports betting, as opposed to tackling some of those major markets like money lines and game totals and things like that. So highly recommend checking that out overall. But really good question there. Let's see. Let me know if you kind of have any follow-up there. And if you're getting familiar with the prop betting tool or anything like that, just feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We do, if you're interested in this and haven't tried out our sports betting product, we do have a free trial for this. So in the upper right, under account management, you can go down here and there's a free 7-day trial. It is $69 a month at full price, but you can get a free 7-day trial and go ahead and try it out for free for 7 days. So definitely a lot of fun there. A lot of fun with football props too. So NFL coming up, that can be a lot of fun. So cool. All right, guys, I see some questions coming in here now. So that is awesome. I'm going to just keep it rolling. I'm going to jump back to this question that came in from Kenneth here right at the start. He said, there's a particular team I want in my stacks, but they are not coming up. What should I do to get more exposure without throwing the whole run out of whack? Yeah, really good question. So I'm going to jump back into our test build here. And this is actually a really good opportunity for me to show something off on the redesign. So I'm going to show you guys first on the existing app how you kind of have to do this. It's a bit of a workaround solution, but the ultimate solution we have on the redesign is much better. Pretty excited about that. But the question is, I'm not getting a team here in my stacks, and what do I do if I want them here? And the issue basically is that right now we only show you the teams that you're already getting that show up in at least one of your 20 lineups. You don't have any of the other teams that are probably in your pool of 500, but aren't in your pool of 20. So the easiest way to do this for the moment, all in one build, is to expand your pool and maybe look at something like the top 200 lineups. That's going to put a ton more lineups here in. And maybe the team that we were looking at was the Dodgers, right? Good hitting team. Maybe we want some Dodger stacks tonight. Maybe not too much, but 20% of our lineup should have Dodger stacks. We can pop 20 in there. What you are often going to see is this message that says we don't have 20% of 200 lineups with Dodger stacks, but that's okay. Now that we have the minimum exposure set, we can go back in here, drop this back down to 20, and it should retain our 20% exposure to Dodger stacks. So we now have Dodgers here, right? That is a very easy way to do that. If you find that you are expanding your pool, maybe even up to 300 or something. Oh, you can't do, once you get this number too high, you're not going to be able to edit exposures anymore. So got to keep the number low enough that you can still edit exposures. I know this looks kind of wonky. This is a bit of a workaround, but we fixed this problem permanently in the redesign. But if you're not seeing a team at all here, right? I think in this case, we probably have close to all the teams here. But if you're not getting a team at all, what I would recommend then is going back to step 1. That probably means that we don't think the team is a very good stack, at least with our default projections. And that's okay. You can still play them. Maybe you're getting some leverage or you think it's a particularly low-owned team. But maybe it's the Tigers that you're not getting any of. Or actually, maybe, you know, it would be a fun one is maybe like Texas, right? Up against Chris Sale. I'm sure we're getting a ton of Chris Sale lineups. Maybe we want some leverage against Sale. We're going to boost up Texas. You can do that here. Click yes to apply all changes and then run another build. And now we're going to get a lot more of the stack we're looking for. So a couple ways to do that there. You can expand your build in the post-build settings to include more lineups until you have lineups that have the right stack, then set a minimum exposure for that team, and then go from there. The other option is just going back to step 1, boosting up the team a little bit and rerunning your build, right? Nothing wrong with that either. But I am real quick going to show off this feature on the beta side because it's not a huge feature, right? Not anything that is going to blow anyone's mind here, but it is fixing this problem. It's a nice quality of life thing. There are a ton of things like this in the redesign. So again, if you haven't seen this already, if this is your first time seeing this, this is our new redesign. I may need to run a new build. Nope, we don't have to. So let's go ahead and edit a couple projections here so we can see all of our lineups. Okay, so we can see our lineups now, but this is the redesign, pretty slick. If you want to see this in more detail, again, recommend checking out the recording of our live stream we had yesterday. But you'll see quickly here on the new site, we have all of the teams that are showing up here that even if they are 0% exposure, it makes it very easy to just add these custom exposures here in immediately. So we don't have to go through the routine of increasing our pool size to see some Dodgers. We just get Dodgers 0% currently, but we can put a minimum exposure of say 20 right here. Boom, 20% Dodger stacks. So fixes that. Definitely a little bit easier to use, a little more intuitive. So again, right now, best way to do it, expand the pool, set a minimum exposure, drop your pool size back down. In the future, don't have to worry about that at all. And we are hoping to release this redesign again. Mentioned it a few times, but this is hopefully going to be coming out here before the start of football season. So very excited about that. But Kenneth, don't know if you're watching live with me here. If you are, let me know if that was helpful. If you have any more follow-up questions, if I went a little bit too fast through anything there too, happy to slow down and walk you back through what we just did there. Couple things noted here from Don. Don, I did get your message. Add to the beta Slack channel. I will get you there as soon as I am off this show. Happy to have you in there. And then I saw you mention encountered errors with setting max exposure in the build screen. So I'm assuming this is a beta thing. I guess either way, if you're having this problem on the live site, definitely reach out to us in the support channel in Slack, and we'd be happy to figure out what's going on. But I assume this is a beta issue. As soon as I get you, actually, you know what? Let me get you in there right now because I got the time to do it. All right, Don, you are in the beta channel. Let me send you a DM too so you have the link. All right. Boom. Sent you a DM too, so you have the link to the beta channel here. If you don't mind, go ahead. And this is true for anybody. If you're testing out the beta, you run into an issue, you need some help, something is confusing, drop it in that beta channel in Slack. And please include a screenshot if you can, and also the link of the page you're on, whether it's the build, like this URL, right? I guess it will look a little bit different. It will look like this one. Whatever page you're on, link us that too, and we are happy to help get that worked out. So, but awesome. For now, I'm going to go ahead and keep us rolling. We had a question here come in from Jeff. He said, I have a follow-up question on avoiding duplicates. If two users use the same projections and set the same exposures without changing anything else, will they get the same pool of lineups? They will probably end up with similar lineups. They may not have the identical set of lineups. And the reason why is our smart diversity slider. So the way smart diversity works is the higher this slider is, the smaller the buckets of random game simulations we're going to use to determine the projection for each player when we build the lineup. So you'll be going in with the same set of custom projections, right? But what we're going to do is when the smart diversity is set at high levels is we're going to take random subsets, random buckets of those game simulations and use those as the projections for each player every single time we build a lineup. So what that does is it allows you to get lineups that are diverse. You get a variant set of lineups, but it also allows us to take into account the players' real ranges of outcomes and incorporate their natural floors and ceilings into your lineups to maximize your upside, right? This is probably maybe one of the single coolest things powering SaberSim here. But what that means is that there is natural variance and there is natural diversity in your builds, even amongst people that are using the identical set of projections and even the identical set of exposures. I would say if you go through and have the exact same set of, even if you do that, it doesn't even have to be two different users. It could just be you. If you go through and run one build with a set of projections, set the same exposures after that build, and then do the same thing over again, I think it's probably likely that you are going to have some similar lineups, maybe even some maybe duplication. I would say with smart diversity at a high setting, it's probably unlikely that you still even have any duplication because there are just so many different combinations of the games coming out. But by editing exposures to match each other exactly, you will have some similarity overall, I guess, in your lineups. You'll probably have many shared players, of course, because the exposures are the same. But again, there are so many. We're talking about up to 5,000 different game simulations here for each game, and we are bucketing those randomly based on your smart diversity. So there's a lot of natural diversity here. Typically, I think it's unlikely that any SaberSim user, even just using default projections, is going to be duplicated in their top 20 or even top 150 with another SaberSim user. So, but really good question. Jeff said, thank you. That answered the questions I had. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, good question. Definitely something that comes up often. And another really strong advantage that SaberSim has over a traditional optimizer, right? Because on a traditional optimizer, even using randomness, even using like a traditional randomness tool, treating every player as a normally distributed player, and then just running a build, even with some level of randomness, is going to create a lot of duplication because it's not actually taking into account real ranges of outcomes of players. So, but really great question there, Jeff. All right, cool. Awesome. I think that is all I see here at the moment for questions, guys. Do you have any other questions here for me today? Anything about, I guess, either the current app or DFS strategy or things like that, or any questions that anybody had from the beta yesterday? I will just remind everybody, I know we've added a lot more users watching here since we started the stream, but our new redesign is now in a limited beta, I guess, limited to SaberSim users. So if you are a SaberSim subscriber, you are now invited to come try out that beta. It is at beta.sabersim.com. And if you try it out, start poking around in there, please DM me in Slack, and I will get you a link to join our private beta channel where we're kind of keeping all of the conversation and bug reports and questions into that channel. So we would love to have you guys in there testing it out, helping us make sure it is ready to rock and roll for football. Has a lot of awesome features. Definitely recommend trying that out. And if you did miss it, Andy was on here live on stream with me yesterday, and we were talking, walking through some of those new features. So that video is up on YouTube. Definitely recommend checking that out as well if you haven't already. Let's see here. I do see another question rolled in from Jim here. He said, for single entry, small field, say under 2,000 people, is the better build to go more chalky on pitcher and get different on bats? Yeah, you know, so this is another question where I think this is kind of talking about like a rule of thumb or a general heuristic that I think maybe isn't necessarily always true. I do think in general, chalk on pitchers is a little bit safer. Pitchers are less variant. Their floors are generally a little bit higher. We can actually look at that and just look at the ranges of outcomes of any two players and compare somebody like Chris Sale, who's clearly going to be a chalky pitcher, does have a very wide range of outcomes here, right? Even with some significant floor games down at like 0 to 10 points, that would be quite a disappointment. But compare that to a chalky hitter, probably somebody like, I assume that, yeah, the Diamondbacks are probably going to be pretty chalky tonight playing in Coors. We look at somebody like Christian Walker, right? His two lowest, I don't know, groups of game outcomes are his two highest likely outcomes, right? And this is a guy that's probably going to be pretty chalky on the slate like tonight. So in some ways, we can say that there is a little bit less variance, a little more safety in pitcher chalk, which means that you may want to play, or you may be comfortable playing some chalkier pitchers in something like a single entry 2,000 person field. But that's slate dependent. It's depends on the overall context of the slate. It depends on what pitchers are chalky and what their ranges of outcomes look like. It depends on what hitters are chalky and what their ranges of outcomes look like. And I think that is where the value of running a test build can be super important, right? We can take this kind of contest, put the default sliders in, maybe tell it to build us the top 50 lineups, and run this build and get an idea about what is viable for the slate. There are going to be slates where it's going to say the two chalkiest pitchers are at 100% exposure for your first 50 single entries, right? And it's probably going to imply at that point that the best way to get different, the best way to build a well-leveraged lineup is to maybe play a different major or minor stack supporting that, right? There are also going to be slates where maybe there is a big set of relatively evenly projected pitchers, and two of those pitchers are in perceived slightly better matchups. And maybe those two pitchers are starting to get out of control chalky, right? The ownership on those guys is starting to really rise. In that particular case, it may make sense to play a better projected stack that's going to be a little bit more chalky and play one of the lower owned pitchers, right? This all very much depends on the slate. Traditional optimizers aren't going to deal with this problem very well, which is why these kind of rules of thumbs exist in the industry, because it's difficult. There's not a lot of other optimizers that can handle all the information in a slate, use the game simulations, and tell you what the variety of different paths of lineup building even are. So this build's wrapping up here, and we can go ahead and take a look at this. But we can look at our top 50. We could even expand it here. Maybe even let's look at our top 150, right? We're just playing a single lineup, but what do the best 150 single entry lineups look like on a slate like this? So you can see, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some comfort in the builder, or a lot of comfort of playing Sale. 72% of the top 150 single entry lineups use probably who I think is going to be the chalkiest pitcher on the slate tonight. We see some other chalk here coming up in Ray as the next best choice, but definitely some of these guys that are probably going to be a little bit of an ownership discount over Ray coming in shortly behind, with a relatively concentrated pitcher pool. Yeah, so we have a lot of Diamondbacks, a fair bit of Rockies, right? That's the Coors game, and then a variety of different stacks falling in behind there. So overall, actually a pretty surprisingly diverse slate, 14 games. I guess that makes some sense, but even for single entries, typically I think these exposures, I'm used to seeing these a little bit more concentrated. We could look at just the top 20 and see what it thinks about the top 20 overall. Ways to go. So when we narrow down to top 20, it definitely narrows in a little bit, starts to think that definitely the way to go at pitcher one is Sale, but quite a few options here as your secondary pitcher. And on the hitting side, lots of Arizona, but mixing in some of these other maybe less chalky stacks as minor pieces. So typically these single entry lineups kind of have a similar look to them. Oh, why didn't that work? And what I would say most often I see is that it is generally a set of pretty well projected pitchers overall, something like this. And then interesting. So I think at the moment we think Colorado is going to be pretty low owned. I don't think that's the case. I think that might be a team that we want to bump up their ownership projections a little bit. But the builder seems to think at the moment, at least, that this is a chalky team paired with a less chalky stack, which probably isn't actually how it's going to work out. But these small field tournaments too, the other thing to consider is that our ownership fade is going to be at low. It's barely even going to be on at all. By simply making really big stacks and allowing some upside into your lineups in the form of smart diversity, you're building lineups that have win equity for these contests anyway. So what the sliders are implying to us is that we really only need to be very slightly worried about ownership at all, right? There's going to be a lot of people in this contest that just make mistakes, that don't play very well projected or optimal plays. There's just going to be so few lineups that even if the two chalkiest pitchers and the two chalkiest stacks are the teams that go off, there's just not very many lineups to take advantage of that. There's a lot of different combinations of even just playing Sale, Gray, and Rockies and Diamondback stacks that in a pool of 2,000, you have a high win equity for that kind of contest anyway. These sliders themselves, I mentioned this all the time here on stream, are back tested and they are driven by data. So the way these are determined is we will actually take real contests that ran at these given contest settings, build thousands of lineups at every single slider combination, and then whatever slider combination has the greatest expected value in those thousands of lineups become the defaults for that contest. So we can actually use this and say, I'm playing a single entry contest of 2,000 people and look at what the sliders are set at and give us a sense of intuition about the way to play that contest, because we know that these are back tested and they're data driven. So this is actually really making a statement to us that we don't need to be overly concerned, or really we actually only need to be very minorly concerned with the impacts of ownership on this build. We mostly just want to make sure that we're building a lineup that has some upside and is of course very well correlated, which does come through in our stack types. So definitely kind of a lot there to unpack. I've got not so many questions in the queue here today, so I'm spending quite a bit of time on each of these. But again, kind of, I guess in summary, I think pitchers are a little less variant. I think that when the builder is forced to make a decision about playing chalk at pitcher or chalk in your hitting stacks, it's probably going to be willing more to eat the chalk at pitchers, right? And that's built into the tool, actually. When we think about ownership fade, it compares the variance of the player in question when thinking about whether the ownership is appropriate or not for that player. So if we think a pitcher is lower variance, we are more likely to be comfortable with their level of ownership, right? But then second, there's a lot of slate context here. There's a lot of things can be different slate to slate based on the size of the slate, the players on the slate, the overall slate context. And by running test builds and building a bunch of extra lineups, we can really dig in here and look and research the slate and figure out what the opportunities to change or be leveraged on the field, or where the opportunities are really that we maybe want to just play the best overall projected play. And then I guess finally, we can use the sliders overall that we know are back tested against real contests that have run in the past to check our intuitions about how we should be thinking about our lineups overall. We can take a contest like this and say, okay, I don't need to be overly concerned about ownership because the contest is so small and it's just a single entry, versus a contest like this. We can say, okay, I need to really start thinking about my ownership at a moderate level, even in addition to the slider, right? I need to be really building some really high upside stacks. I need to look at, I probably want to play very diverse lineups, and I want to be, have a pretty moderate approach to my ownership fade in a big contest like something like this. So, but really good question. Jim said made perfect sense. Yeah. I'm glad that was helpful, and always kind of fun on these days too, where I'm kind of answering the questions live as they come in. I don't so much have a queue of questions behind me because I can spend a lot of time breaking things down on these questions and talk about everything that I'm thinking about. But really good questions. So Anthony said, "What's up, Jordan? Good stuff. You do awesome job with these office hours." Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I have fun up here getting to do these 5 times a week. It's made me a bit of a better DFS player too. Getting to hear ideas from people that I really even sometimes haven't thought of, or ways to use SaberSim in unique different strategies. Just coming up here and getting to talk about this stuff for an hour Monday to Friday has been as helpful for me as it has been it sounds like for you guys. So as always, I'm always welcoming any and all feedback about how we can make this show better. This is for you guys. So if you have positive feedback, like that is always welcome. Always appreciate that. But any constructive feedback or anything that I could do to make this a better show for you guys, always definitely appreciate hearing that. But Any other questions for me here, guys? We've managed to get a little over 39, almost 40 minutes here on the show today. So pretty good stream. I know it seems like in general, the beginning of the week streams, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we really get a lot of questions. A lot of people coming in excited after the weekend of DFS slates to ask a bunch of questions, kind of definitely some lighter streams here at the end of the week. But yeah, it's been another fun week of office hours. Any other questions for me here before we start thinking about wrapping this up? I am heading down here later this afternoon to go watch the Diamondbacks and Rockies game here at Coors Field with some of the SaberSim guys. The FanDuel baseball championships are tomorrow. So going down there, meeting up with some of the SaberSim crew that has tickets. I know Giant Squid's got a few tickets. Kurt and DFS Couch in our Slack channel of a couple tickets as well. So be meeting up with everybody. I unfortunately do not have a ticket to that event. So I am just tagging along for fun, but rooting for all the SaberSim guys and everybody representing the SaberSim avatars here in the FanDuel Baseball Championships tomorrow. So hopefully come back here on Monday afternoon with some good news about SaberSim's overall showing in those championships. So should be a lot of fun, but looking forward to that. I don't see any other questions here coming in, so I will let everybody go ahead and get back to their afternoons. Thank you again for everybody that tuned in and asked questions and participated in this all week. If you want to get access to the beta, DM me in Slack. I will get you hooked up, and we will be right back at this again with another office hours, 2 p.m. Eastern on Monday. Enjoy this slate tonight. Enjoy anything you are playing this weekend. Enjoy your weekend otherwise as well, and I will talk to you guys on Monday. See ya.